Welcome to the Bible Answer Man segment of Rafa's ministry. Glad to have you looking into this segment of our ministry. And we want to answer the question today. It comes to us as, Dr. West, where did the races come from? Well, the Bible offers no real definitive answer for this. The race question is really a very divisive term. It's been used over history to kill millions of individuals. It divides people based upon ignorance, upon false pride, upon false superiority. It's not an evolutionary fact either. The people try to teach that it comes that way. But even Darwin, in his dealing with it, only called it a theory. So, as we look into this, it's good for us to realize that we are the first generation that is informed enough to be able to scientifically prove that we have proceeded from a single parent. It's important to understand this. Science has proven that mankind, as we know the genus Homo sapiens sapien, which is modern man, proceeded from one pair of individuals, male and female. They have traced it back to what they call the mitochondrial E and the Y chromosomal Adam. And science has proven by their research that this represents every man and every woman in history has descended from a single pair of man and woman. And of course that coincides with Genesis, where it says God made Adam, who was male, alone, and then out of him, he created the female, Eve. When the Bible addresses race, it really doesn't speak of it as we look at it in terminology in the colloquialisms of today and the way that we view it in the marketplace. Yet the Bible deals with race mainly as families and tribes and nations. It alludes maybe to skin and eyes and hair. These, however, are not definitively taught. They're not really even in-depthly addressed. It's mainly the families of tribes and nations that the Bible describes it as evolving from in those academic areas. You see, God separates people because of disobedience and languages, not because of colors of hair or skin or eyes. Because of their disobedience and language, we see that God sent people away. Even at the Tower of Babel, we saw that was a problem. There was the language. It wasn't a racial discrimination. It was a charge against God's injustice, and they wanted to be like God. So, in looking at race, the Gospel of Acts says, hath God made one blood all nations of men for to dwell on the face of the earth? He says he's done that. He's made of one blood all nations of men to dwell upon the earth. And the dividing question in race only relates to a man's false pride and prejudices. It's prejudging. It's their idea of inferiority, that someone is inferior to them based upon certain visible facts or speech patterns. And then they set themselves up. And as I said, millions upon millions of people have been killed because of race. And it's still flagrant in so many areas today. We've had a chance to deal with it. And I hate to say this in one way, but it's by revelation. If we think about it, if we allow people to bring race into a situation, it's divisatory. And it divides people, and a lot of times it's used for political purposes. It's used for economic purposes. There's a lot of people who have made a good living off of stirring up race situations. And when I think about the Hollywood situation, they're as guilty, if not more than other people, because every time things seems to be settling down in the racial situation, Hollywood or some TV program will come out about people's roots, and they'll talk about how someone has been persecuted, or they'll have a movie about how someone has been killed or murdered because of their race, and it stirs it up. We see it in the marketplace where people enjoy and make a good living off of keeping that attitude stirred up about people's racial tendencies. They want to do that. Politicians are terrible about using race and gender and those kind of things to advance their agenda. So only born again believers can really live free of racial discrimination. When we visit, whether we're black or white, and we visit into an opposite racial looking church, if it's a true Christian church, and I do this in my own life. I have wonderful Christian pastors who are black. And when I visit in their churches, I feel no animosity. We have wonderful, warm Christian fellowship. So only the Christian can really be free of racial division, because I'm sure that Satan and demonic activity thrive on racial discrimination. So don't allow your mind to be deceived into racial questioning. 2 Timothy chapter 2 says, the foolish and unlearned, that means ignorant dispute, you avoid these. It says, foolish and unlearned questions avoid, knowing that they gender strife. In other words, they generate conflicts, and because they're based upon ignorance. One learned theologian attributed racial features to sun's physics, rays from the suns and types of the genetic alteration from that area. Now, I disagree with that. There's not enough time for genes to be augmented or changed, to be altered in any way to the degree required in the 17,000 years that we have for human beings that have been on earth, the modern human being. We just don't have enough time for that to happen. We have definitive evidence, say, for the last 3,000 or 4,000 years, and that eats up a great third or almost half of the time that's been allowed for humans to have been on the earth, and there's not enough time for those kind of things to happen. So the Bible doesn't address it, and preachers, when they teach about this, they have to be very, very careful, as do I when I preach or teach on it. I've given you what I think the Bible, how it addresses it. Now, I can give you my personal opinion about it, about how this comes into play. It's not verified by Scripture, my opinion. It's not incumbent upon anyone to agree with my opinion, but I believe that in God placed a special egg packet. This may sound a little provocative, but take it for what it's worth. But I just believe, after consideration, that in Eve alone, God has placed a special egg. He placed a special egg packet. And because Eve was called the mother of all humans, and there again, I'll use the word Homo sapiens sapien to describe modern man. In her was the different egg cells that came forth, and that eggs that came out of her were fertilized by Adam, and she gave birth. I believe Eve gave birth to combinations of distinctive Caucasian, Negroid, and Mongoloid babies. And she probably altered those, or she could have given birth to a number of those in sequence, or altered different times of birth of these. But I think that's the way it happened. I think that's the only thing we have, that she and she alone had that egg packet in her. So should God allow interracial creations? Yes, he allowed creation of races to us, but they're not to divide us. They're to make us appreciate the diversity of God. God is a God of color and harmony and beauty. So when we look at one another, we shouldn't see the different colors in Caucasians and Negroid and Mongoloid, because that would kind of tend to be what we call white, which is actually a pinkish, rosyish color. Adam, his name of Adam is really not white, it's rosy. And the Negroid, they would be more of a solid black color, but that can be beautiful. We have beautiful features in that. In the Mongoloid, they're of division in between that. So I believe that when we see these are the three main races of people: Caucasian, Negroid, and Mongoloid babies. So these kinds of racial differences should enhance us and should make us just enjoy each other and appreciate each other's color. And the more and more in our generation, because of travel and intermingling, people intermarrying in different races, we are slowly dissipating these three definitive colors. And if God allows enough time, which he's not going to allow, we would sooner or later really just mix into one combination of that color, which will be a color of mixing the pinkish color, the total black color, and the color in between. And as people continue to intermingle and interconceive, then we would eventually move into just one color of people. You can do that with paint. You keep mixing different color of paint. They're strong in the beginning, but the more you mix, you get different colors, and they're toned down to a different hue. So the latter part of this is my conception. You can take it for what it's worth. I can't prove it biblically, but to me, it's the only logical reason, because it's the only one that produces enough time for this kind of diversity to happen, is for Eve to have had that type of ability, but she and she alone, her girls and boys did not conceive different kind of babies. They started the process of having their own terms. Conceivably, at that time, a black couple would have black babies. The pink colored would have pink babies. And the in-between Mongoloid colored would have their color. And then as they married sister and brother, which would had to have happened in the early days, closer to the original grafting of people, then those colors would have begun to have been mixed. So I think I've given you this. I don't force that upon you, but I have given you some scriptural evidence to believe that God alone knows how and why he created this. So maybe this will help you. Go to our website, Rafa Ministers World. There you'll find other things that will be a blessing to you, and research the other things in our Bible Answer Man, Lee West Ministries, and tell your friends about it. I believe it will help them also. So until we meet again, this is Dr. West just saying that I hope and pray that God will just richly bless your life.